Awesome. So, worth noting if you're new to the piano, there are sets of 2 black keys and sets of 3 black keys. So the 2 black keys are here, and then the 3 black keys are here. Is that everyone happy with that? Yeah, so they repeat, okay? The whole idea of the piano is that it repeats. It's a repeating pattern. So even just those notes, we can refer to as a pentatonic scale. Pentatonic scales are 5 notes, not any 5 notes, a specific 5-note variation. So when we find 2 black keys, we go immediately to the left. We find our C. Okay, so then we can find C, middle C, which is in this case C4, which is first C, second C, third C, fourth C. Okay, fourth C from the left of the piano. So that's middle C. So middle C will be written with 1 ledger note underneath the music stave. Is that, everyone happy with that? Yeah.
I just have one quick question.
Yes, I'm listening. I'm going to get my phone. Yes.
Oh, no worries. So I, obviously middle C, yes, makes sense, C4. But I've sometimes seen it called something else, like C3 or something confusing. Is it just depending on the size of the keyboard, or is it like that's meant to be the universal C4 and then someone along the way has decided it's not?
Well, great question. Sometimes it is referred to as C3 or C4. Based on, if you look up like Yamaha or look up Roland, as in the companies, they will tend to refer to middle C as either C4 or C3. I forget which one's which, and it does get very confusing when you're programming keyboards. Often, if the instructions like C3 to da da da, you actually have to work out whether they're actually talking about which particular C. In this keyboard on the screen, I'm sharing my screen, right? Am I sharing my screen? Yeah. This one's C4, but I think I'm more used to it being C3. Can you see that? The C4? Yeah. Does that answer your question? Or did I misunderstand?
Kind of. Like, I mean, I get it that sometimes it's just C3 and sometimes it's C4, but I don't fully understand why.
Oh, sure. As in, like, how we get the number?
Well, I think more of like if I'm reading something and it says C3, but I know it's meant to be C4. Do I just use my context around it to figure out which one it is, or is it just going to be a constant confusion?
What are you reading? Like, are you talking about like an audition notice or something that might say the range of the character?
No, I think it's come up when I've been teaching because I have keyboards at school and some of them say C3 and some of them say C4. And so I'm teaching the kids at C4, but then on their keyboard they can see it says C3. And
are they full-size keyboards, by the way?
Some of them are, yes. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So that could be it. Is that what it is?
Firstly, it's really hard to determine where middle C is on a small keyboard. Because your reference is put off, the fact that the keys are that the key bed is smaller. As for why certain things are C4 and C3, it all depends on what number you're giving the first C in the keyboard. So those for C4 are calling the first C C1, and then those for C3 are calling the first C C0. So so it gets a bit more complicated when we get keyboards that are smaller and different sizes. In theory, the actual frequency, the actual oscillation, of that middle C, you do need to use your ear to actually go, is this middle C, is this C3, C4 middle C, does it equal middle C or not? So you kind of use a bit of context for that. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Of course, when you do get like ranges in auditions and stuff, super complicated because sometimes you don't know what register, so it's all referring to register, right? In the sense that the C4, the number then gets combined to every note after that C. So I find C4, and then every note after that is going to be referred to as a 4. D4, E4, F4, G4, A4, B4, and then C5. And then the extra complication with the tenor bass voice, their music is written in the treble clef generally, hopefully with a little 8 underneath the treble clef, but actually they mean an octave lower. So it gets a bit complicated. And so that's why, like, when I ask for people's range in notes, I don't really trust it, because you're kind of like, what's the reference point? And then some people say high G, and you're like, where is that high G? Like, it's all a bit relative, isn't it? It's a bit complicated. So I'm gonna actually, I'm changed my mind about the notation stuff. So hopefully I can pull that up nice and quickly. And those on the Twitch world. Yes, okay, so C, great. Cool, happy days. C to the C above is an octave. Okay, that's what we call an octave, or we call it a perfect 8 in our intervals. I'll just go through intervals really quickly. It's important to understand intervals so that you know how to create chords. So C to D is a... Can you hear me when I'm playing the piano? Yeah. C to D is a major second. C to E is a major third. C to F is a perfect fourth. C to G is a perfect fifth. C to A is a major sixth. C to B is a major 7. So firstly, you just notice that they all take on the scale degree. They all take on the scale degree depending on the distance. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major 7. Okay. And it goes major, major, perfect, perfect, major, major. Okay. There's all that distance, right? Just so happens that I'm using C major as a reference, but I could use this distance and apply it to any note. You know, I can create G to A, major second. Okay, so it's important to know that it's not just to do with the major scale, it's actually to do with the amount of semitones between those two notes. So when you actually look a bit deeper, a major second is 2 semitones. 1, 2. Yeah, everyone happy with that? And then you can just keep working it up. So major third, 4 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. A perfect fourth is going to be 5. And then a perfect fifth is going to be 7. And then a major sixth is going to be 9. And then a major 7 is going to be 11. So there's different ways to look at it. You can find the interval by working out the actual chromatic, the actual semitones in between the two notes. Or you could know the major scale. And if I'm like just going G, D, I know that in G and D, in G major scale, that's scale degree 1, scale degree 5. And so if I know that I'm in the major scale, then I know that's going to be a perfect fifth. So perfect intervals don't have any major or minor component. They're perfect, so they don't require them. But in a larger sense, the major and minor intervals are there to create mood, emotion, color. The fifth doesn't actually create color. It gives you a feeling. Everything gives you a feeling, I guess. But as soon as you add the major minor component, that's when we get an opinion about the music. It's like it wants to be one way or it wants to be another, a sort of duality within music, if you will. So, as you can imagine, there are minor intervals too. Okay, and I'll probably spend a bit more time on this in a future class if you guys are interested. This keyboard's super laggy. So C to D, flatten it by a semitone, we get a minor second. C to E, flatten it by a semitone, we get a minor third. So I'll just show you for a second. So we get, that's a major second, minor second. Major third, minor third. Perfect, no major minor. Perfect, no major minor. Major sixth, minor sixth. Major 7, minor 7. Is that cool? So you can work out the intervals, of course. Hello, Diona.
It's just flattening everything by a semitone.
Correct. Yep. You don't have to look at it that way because, like, say if you have to enter into a minor interval, you know, you're not always going to think of the major interval then flatten it. But my general way of looking at things is to look at the major and flatten it. Like, it's just kind of just an easier way to look at things. Because that way you only have to learn a set amount of intervals. And of course, once you learn all the scales and all the intervals, you'll know the minor intervals just by working it out for another split second. So we then look at the idea of the major chord, which is a major third and a minor third. So also known as 4 semitones and 3 semitones. So if the major chord is a 4 semitones and 3 semitones, if I flatten the third, I get a minor chord, which is 3 semitones and 4 semitones. So it's just inverse. So major chord being 4 and 3, minor chord being 3 and 4. Everyone happy with that? Major and minors? So major chord, minor chord. Major chord, minor chord. 1, 3, 5 at the scale degrees. Okay, each of these notes have a number associated with them. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As I'm sure you're familiar with that very exciting, amazing vocal warm-up. That is deathly and annoying. So 1, 3, 5. 1 flat 3 5, 1 3 5, 1 flat 3 5. So it's nice if you can kind of sing through it and understand it a bit deeper in that sense. There we go, major and minor chord. You get any major chord, flatten the third by a semitone, you get a minor chord. So for example, remember, major chord is 4 semitones and 3 semitones if you're unsure of how to find it. Major chord, flatten it, minor chord. Okay, so there's 4 types of chords: major, minor, back to major, just is a bit easier, augmented, sharpen the 5. Yeah, augmented, sharpen the 5. The augmented chord is an unusual one. It doesn't really, it's leading somewhere, but doesn't quite have the opinion of a major or minor, but it's definitely an in-between chord. It's sort of trying to get somewhere. Back to major, just for context, minor chord, and then flatten the 5th, diminished chord. So 4, major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Or rather, I'll just say it in the order that I said it in. Major, minor, augmented, diminished. So major is 1, 3, 5. Minor is 1 flat 3 5, augmented is 1 3 sharp 5, and diminished is 1 flat 3 flat 5. So you notice you just alter the notes. So in theory, if you know your major chords, you can work out any other chord based on altering those 3 notes. And all you need to learn is 12 major chords, because that's the only amount there are. It's very easy. You just go C major, C sharp major, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, not that. And you're back to C major. Yeah, not that one. Does that make sense? So you can learn major chords in 2 different ways. 3 different ways, really. You can just pick any note and then go 4 semitones and 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Major chord. The second way is like G. Okay, well, G major. So what's the key of G major? I should know my G major's key. 1, 3, 5. Major chord. Done. There's another way, but I can't remember. The other way I would say is like understanding relative to where you are. So this is where like knowing that if I just shift something by equal distance, I will still get a major chord. C, shift everything by a semitone. It's still a major chord. Shift everything by a semitone, still a major chord. Still a major chord. Might look a bit different, but it's still a major chord, you know? So we don't pass judgment. It just looks, it's a different shape. But we tend to kind of, as humans, kind of go, oh, but that's that, and this is this. And we compartmentalize. So there's a philosophy time for every lesson. And we go, I don't know what to do with the black keys. But let's not go on that tangent. So...
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you sing harmonies, is it 1, 3, 5? Is that like the rule?
Really depends, I guess. Depends on like the song. Do you have something in mind?
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Let's say, for example, the song goes like this. So firstly, we need to think of the grammar of the piece. The grammar is the chordal structure, okay? This is what I refer to as chordal structure. It's like grammar, it's like where are the full stops, where are the commas, what's the actual sentence structure of this chordal progression. Otherwise, how do I add harmonies to it if there's not actually any bedding of harmony at all, you know? Because you'll get that. You'll get like, for example, if we go way back to like Gregorian chants, like there was no harmony to begin with. It was just a monophonic line. There's no harmony. Then, of course, we start introducing an extra interval. But I think even before then, the idea of counterpoint was introduced. So even just the sheer idea of like, you sing that and then you sing a little bit later. Then there was harmony, but there was just harmony by chance. There's just two events occurring in time, just by the sheer fact that two lines were occurring in different times. Does that make sense? So we get the idea of counterpoint. Of course, counterpoint was developed a little bit more to actually go, well, when this is occurring, this will happen underneath, and when this rhythm's happening, that rhythm will happen. But the whole idea of counterpoint is not really to define harmony. It's actually about rhythmic components and motifs occurring through time that so happened to create harmony just by sheer circumstance. But then, as like music was developed, this is such a generalized view, but we start to discover the perfect fourth and perfect fifth, and then all of a sudden we're getting these that in a sense is harmony. It's like two notes occurring at once, right? Two different notes, two different notes. But the fifth and the fourth were kind of discovered in the beginning, very primal old sounds. And plus they have a sort of like a scientific frequency that's actually related to the overall octave. So I think it's the most accessible frequency to discover next. And then eventually, like, I'm going to get my periods wrong, but I'm going to say during classical period, but I don't think that's quite right. Let's just say around that time, we start to introduce the major and minor intervals, or even the major and minor third, which for a period of time was considered not sacred, in the sense that it sort of like challenged the church, this sort of idea of romanticism and chordal tones and color. Yeah. So of course, then it was getting used a lot, because it was a way to express, and then we get like sort of romanticism and different ways to express emotions through chords. So all of a sudden we get this very basic notion of like major, happy, joyful, and then the very traditional minor, sad, sorrowful, la la la. Very basic, but affectations is the idea there. Affectations. How do we affect the music? But like, what's the essence and the sort of notes of this music? Pardon the pun. The notes more akin to perfume. Yes, I worked for a Perfume Connection for 3 months, and it was a great time. I loved it. It was great. It was weird, but I love selling perfume. And at Ben Sherman simultaneously. I used to run between the two. And then at the same time, I got offered a job at EB Games, but I just didn't rock up to my first shift. Such a little shit. Really sad I didn't work there. I reckon would have been fun. Anyway, that was a good long while ago when I was younger and hip, says the old, less young and less hip individual. So, you asked, is that how harmonies work? And I answered you with a history question. Bringing back to my example of that little song that I created, which was a bit rubbish, but so it's going. Here's how I break down this sentence structure. It's going chord 1. This is a chord based on the scale degree 1 of this particular key. So I'm in the key of C major. Yeah, I'm playing C major chord. So it's a chord built on the scale degree 1 of C major. Then I move to the scale degree 4 chord. Each scale degree has its own chord and quality. Okay, so I move from 1 to 4. Da 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 da. So 1 4 1 4 1. Okay, if it was just 1, it'd sound like this: 1 1 1 1 1. That's the song of 1. It's very boring. And then rock and roll and blues take more advantage of this, like do do da 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 da. So when harmony goes, well, for harmonies, I need to understand if there's a melody. So two things. It's like, is it more like Motown, like some oohs in the background, or is there actually a melody going? This is my melody. This is a 1 song, 1 4 1. For example, da 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 da. I look at this in a contextual way. I could do this, just use my ears. That's fine, no issues. Or I could write it down. And I've got E F E F E if I know that the bass is moving from C, F, C, F, C, I know that the chord is going C to F major, C to F major, you know, it's going back between the two. So I need to look at how do I fill in the missing notes. That's how I find my harmonies. So how do I fill in the missing notes? So I've already got a scale degree 3 in the melody. So I don't want the harmony to sing a 3 because I would like to cover the harmony in a more broader context. So I'm going to ask another singer to sing this scale degree 5 and scale degree 1. Of course, if we start to get into the semantics of this, I probably wouldn't do exactly that. This is purely theoretical. If I wanted to actually be cool, I would do something different. But we're not here to be cool, we're just learning the theory. So, and then the next melody goes da. Sorry, the keyboard's a bit laggy. Da, da. So then I would go, well, the scale degree 1 in this chord is already covered because it's a chord of F. So that's scale degree 1 in this context, even though it's scale degree 4 in the key of C major. So, you know, we derive more context, like we hone in on the context. We begin in C major C major as a key. Okay, now remember the home key is all about what notes am I using to construct my composition. I'm using the notes of C major. Cool, that's great. I'm going to pinch this, pinch this, pinch this, pinch this. And it just so happens that our ears move to particular strong chords. And the strong chords that we'd like to move to are the one chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord. They're referred to as primary chords. I'm jumping all over the shop at the moment because I think this needs a proper session to be covered. Something I take for granted. So one chord, C, F, C. So some vocalists would be going 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, which is weird because it's going a G to A. So it's like, how is that 5 and how is that 3? If I was looking at it purely like in a big picture, I would go 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, C major. But because it's actually going from 1 to 4, the chord, I'm actually looking at this A relative to the chord that it's moving to. And the A relative to the chord that it's moving to is actually scale degree 3. So I go 5, 3, 5, because I want to understand what is the function of this note within the chord that's being played. Because the function of the 3 is much more relevant than the function of the 6 in the F major chord. The function of the 3 in F major is much more relevant because we know that the 3 actually holds like musical, contextual, emotional cues. Yeah, so there's a lot of information. This is a lot. We will do more of this. I reckon I forget how much I know. Well, I reckon we'll keep going down the chordal lane and understand how each scale degree has its own chord. But in order to kind of get a better understanding we need to sort of understand that each key is its own little village. And then if we move to another village, we move to a different key. But sometimes, let's say this village is got you know, Cheryl and Mary and John or some shit like that. And then you want to borrow Mary from the village that's kind of over yonder, you know, Mary, come over here, you know, come over to C major village for a second. So that's how I'm seeing it at the moment. I'm going, cool, we're in C major, and then we're traveling to Mary, but Mary's coming over. And then we're going back to C major. So it's like Mary stepped into C major village, but I haven't quite moved over to Mary's village. Because if I was to move over to Mary's village, and we don't have to go into this too much detail, it would actually sound a bit more like this. Now I'm in Mary's village. Okay, not that you need to know exactly what's going on, but I've just modulated to a different key. So this is my analogies. I sort of see keys as like train stations or like villages. And I think it's a nice visual way of understanding it because then we understand that they're just home beacons. And of course we can kind of pick and choose and color and change the palette and morph to create all sorts of weird things once we actually break the rules. But if we understand the idea of dominant chords, then we know how to actually move between keys. If we want to. We don't always want to, but I think it's a bit more interesting. All right, friends. That was a lot. We still have some viewers on Twitch. That's crazy. They're all you. Look, I'll take it. All right, I'll take it. Do you have any questions?
I was so close to logging into Twitch on my phone before, just so you had another viewer.
Hey, it's nice to know if unique viewers who have just come to watch me talk nonsense for a little while. I'll probably set it up. I reckon I'll set up the iPad screen a little later, but I'll put less focus on it. I'll just pop it to the side. Anyway, that won't make sense to you guys because you're looking at a Zoom window. So, Diona, how you doing?
I'm confused, but it's fine.
Yeah, good. All right. Confusion
I
is
think
good.
some things are making sense. I think it just needs to sit. Because I don't know, I feel like when you sing like an ensemble and stuff, people like know chords and they know what this note is in this chord, and I'm just confused.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't need to know. Some people prefer not to know. There's merits to knowing. Yes. There's merits to knowing and not knowing. Some people will just sing the notes. And, the less they know, the better. Because they just sing the notes, it's not a problem. Sometimes people who know too much, they sing the notes, but they think about it too much. And, they're like, how do I fit into this? And they're all like, and then it's like, just sing the note, just stop thinking about it, It's like, but I'm also prone to that because I'm like, ooh, what's this? And how does this fit into that? More to the point though, I will actually think of things, the function of the note is actually really important because if you're singing a third in a particular key, rather than it being the fifth in another key, you're probably going to change your tuning a little bit. Hopefully. Hopefully with a good ear and a good musical director, they can actually provide you that feedback. That's why sometimes I'll go, actually, this B in G major, I need you to flatten it a little bit rather than the B in E major, which I need you to sharpen it just a fraction. So those that don't have sort of harmonic knowledge might just sing the B as pure B, as it exists in a piano. They might not. They might actually modulate and sort of understand what's going on around them. But if they were a bit more robotic in that sense, they might just sing the B as it is on a piano. But actually, the piano is just a sort of a manufactured squishing of all the notes to make them equal and even. There are actually, in fact, many different types of beats because they're on a frequency, and frequencies oscillate and have a spectrum. So you can actually bend between, I don't know if you can hear that. Sound is a waveform. So anyway, that's just my way of saying, like, there are times in a rehearsal where I'm like, oh, we need to flatten this and sharpen this. You technically have to sing the same note, but it has to exist in the chord a little differently. So the singer who's a bit more primed to that, they might be able to be a bit more, I don't know, a bit more useful or powerful. I'm not really sure. But knowing how it functions and moves means that you can probably improvise a little bit more. You can use your ear, but sometimes it might be a bit wrong, because you're just experimenting. But if you're singing a Motown classic or something and you just got some, you're going to understand how the chords move and how the notes move in the chords, and you might actually kind of go, oh, I don't need to move here and I don't need to move there. Whereas everyone else, someone without harmonic knowledge might think they have to go, they might think they have to move all the time. But what I'm interested in is like going, well, what are the similar chord tones in the chords? So if you just hold a similar chord tone, you don't actually have to change. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's just gotten a bit brainy, sorry.